We've been watching a congressional hearing erupt into shouting matches. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been defiant and explosive as she fields questions from members of the House Judiciary Committee, and it's happening on multiple fronts and multiple controversies, including the Justice Department's release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. First, just watch this exchange with Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal.
It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer it.
All right, guys, John here. So this has just happened, guys. Two political explosions detonated on the same afternoon within the same news crawl. And when you place the wreckage side by side, what emerges isn't just a bad day, but the skeletal outline of a presidency coming apart at the institutional joints, with Republican strategists watching their midterm prospects collapse in real time. The first detonation came when House Democrats walked into a formal proceeding and handed over a document that fundamentally rewrites the relationship between the Justice Department and the White House.
Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm reclaiming my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Please
stop the clock.
The legislation. This is
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape.
They filed formal ethics charges against the sitting Attorney General of the United States. Not a press release, not a sternly worded letter, not a cable news hit where someone uses the word troubling 17 times. Formal charges. The kind that trigger official processes, that create committee obligations, that force members of Congress to go on the record, that generate subpoena power and witness testimony and documentary discovery. And the person in the crosshairs is Pam Bondi, the nation's top law enforcement officer, accused of transforming the Department of Justice from an independent guardian of the law into a personal enforcement arm of the president's political grudges.
Shortly after she was confirmed, Attorney General Pam Bondi told lawyers at the Department of Justice that it was their job to, quote, zealously advance, protect, and defend the policies of the United States as set by the president. It was an early example of the ways in which the Trump administration has sought to transform the DOJ into the president's tool for promoting his agenda and challenging detractors.
The second detonation came from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, where the Speaker of the House, the highest-ranking Republican in the legislative branch, the man whose entire job description boils down to keep the majority intact and project strength, essentially walked to a microphone and told the world that the wheels are detaching from the axle. Mike Johnson canceled scheduled oversight hearings. He converted them into roundtables. He used language that no speaker ever wants to use.
Afternoon, everybody. Despite unrelenting predictions from many of you today in the press that we would fail this week, we did exactly the opposite. I'm really glad to tell you that House Republicans pulled together and delivered some major pieces of legislation and huge priorities for the country in the last few days. Let me give you a couple of examples. We passed the Farm Bill, as you know, a major achievement, delivering real relief and certainty for our rural America and for all Americans. This is the first time Congress has done that since 2018. Been quite a while, but we got it done. We've also made certain that the House is going to be able to have an up or down vote on a date certain on the E15 issue, which is, is a big priority for a lot of our members here in the chamber.
He said the party has lost momentum. He acknowledged losing control. These are not the words of a leader who sees a clear path to victory. These are the words of a leader standing in the rubble, trying to figure out how much of the structure can still be salvaged before November arrives. Those two realities landing on the same calendar square against the backdrop of everything else cascading through this administration paint a picture so stark and so alarming that it almost defies the usual political vocabulary. We are not talking about a rough patch. We are not talking about messaging challenges. We are talking about an institutional crisis where the Attorney General faces formal ethics proceedings. The Speaker publicly concedes that his majority is slipping away, and the President, at the center of it all, has gone so quiet on his own communication platform that the silence itself has become a headline. The story begins with a piece of digital evidence that may end up being one of the most consequential accidental publications in modern political history. Somewhere in the president's orbit, a draft post was composed on Truth Social, and before it could be reviewed, before the usual process of vetting and editing and strategic calibration could take place, before anyone could say, maybe we should not put it quite like that, the draft went live. And what it contained was not ambiguity. It was not general encouragement.
A social media post from President Trump is making news today. He posted a message pressing the Attorney General Pam Bondi to indict several of his political rivals. An administration official confirmed to NBC News that Trump thought he'd sent the message directly to Bondi. He was surprised to learn he had actually posted the message on Truth Social. Since the post was made, 2 of the 3 people mentioned by name in the post have been indicted: former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James.
It was not the kind of presidential statement that lawyers can later massage into something defensible. The draft post listed specific names: James Comey, Adam Schiff, Letitia James. Then it delivered an instruction so direct and so unmistakable that it obliterates every official claim this administration has ever made about respecting the independence of federal law enforcement. Just do it now. Those 5 words, attached to 3 names, directed at the Attorney General of the United States, represent a written presidential order to prosecute specific individuals because the president considers them political enemies. There is no alternative reading. There is no friendly interpretation. There is no context that makes "just do it" now mean anything other than what it plainly means. This leaked post has now become the evidentiary foundation of the ethics complaint that House Democrats filed against Pam Bondi. For months, critics have argued that the pattern of DOJ prosecutions, the timing of certain indictments, the targeting of particular individuals, the obstruction of transparency around sensitive files, all pointed to a weaponized Justice Department operating at the direction of the president rather than the law. The administration has consistently denied this. Official statements have insisted that prosecutorial decisions are made independently, that the Attorney General exercises her own judgment, that the President does not interfere in specific cases. The leaked post makes those denials functionally impossible to sustain. You cannot stand at a podium and claim the DOJ operates free of presidential interference when the President's own draft post shows him naming the people he wants prosecuted and demanding immediate action. The contradiction is absolute, and it is documented. The ethics complaint filed against Bondi now has a piece of paper, a time-stamped digital record that transforms allegations of political weaponization from a circumstantial argument into a documentary one. And that changes everything about how this story moves through Congress, through the courts, and through the electoral landscape. The specific content of the ethics charges goes beyond the leaked post. The complaint alleges that Bondi has been actively obstructing the release of the Epstein files, that she has been part of a deliberate mechanism of resistance against transparency, that the pressure to keep those files sealed has been orchestrated at the highest levels of the Justice Department with presidential involvement behind it. The demand for the Epstein files has not faded over time. It has intensified. Journalists have filed lawsuits. Members of Congress have demanded answers. The public has watched partial releases and continued sealing and has drawn its own conclusions about what must be in those documents that is worth protecting at such enormous political cost. Now, the Epstein question is no longer just a matter of public pressure. It is embedded in a formal congressional ethics proceeding with specific allegations, specific named conduct, and a process that will generate hearings and testimony and document requests. The ethics investigation creates a mechanism that operates independently of the administration's control, and it is going to keep producing information between now and November. Every witness interview, every subpoena, every procedural step becomes another news cycle, another data point, another opportunity for the public to ask what is being hidden and who is hiding it. The Epstein thread runs through every major story this administration has been grappling with. It surfaces in the context of the SPLC grand jury misconduct allegations. It appears in the Marine Comey wrongful termination case. It was invoked when a former president suggested that the treason investigations were designed to distract from Epstein accountability. It was raised again when civil rights organizations connected the most inflammatory racial imagery of the campaign season to a deliberate effort to shift attention away from the Epstein narrative. Every single strand of controversy across weeks of compounding crises keeps leading back to the same locked filing cabinets and the same unanswered questions. And now the Attorney General of the United States is formally charged with being part of the mechanism that is keeping those cabinets locked. The political and legal implications of the Bondi ethics charges are severe enough on their own, but they arrive in a context made exponentially more dangerous for the administration by what was happening simultaneously on Capitol Hill. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the man whose institutional role requires him to project confidence in Republican governance and maintain the organizational coherence of his caucus, made a series of decisions and statements that amount to a public admission of political retreat. He canceled oversight hearings. The hearings that were supposed to generate favorable coverage for the Republican majority, that were supposed to put the administration's critics on the defensive, that were supposed to build momentum heading into the midterm campaign, were abruptly converted into roundtables. That conversion is not a procedural technicality. It is a public acknowledgement that the hearings were not working, that the witnesses were not performing, that the Republican members were not maintaining the discipline required to keep the proceedings on favorable terrain, and that the fractures within the caucus had become too deep to manage in the high visibility format of a public hearing. Then Johnson said the words that every Republican incumbent in every competitive district is now going to have to answer for between now and Election Day. He said the party has lost momentum. He acknowledged losing control. Those words will become television advertisements. They will become debate questions. They will become the clip that plays before every story about Republican disarray. The Speaker of the House, the leader of the Republican majority, publicly conceded that his own party is struggling to function as a coherent governing body, and every Democrat running in a swing district now has a quote from the Republican Speaker himself validating the argument that the GOP majority is failing. The decision to cancel the oversight hearings reveals something deeper about the current state of the House Republican caucus. The caucus is dealing with an unprecedented wave of retirements. It is dealing with internal revolts over foreign policy and war strategy that have produced bipartisan coalitions against the administration's position. It is dealing with members who are calculating their own political survival and concluding that loyalty to the party leadership is less valuable than distance from it. In that environment, running effective oversight hearings becomes nearly impossible because some of your own members are using those hearings to ask the same hard questions the opposition party is asking. A hearing functions as a political tool when the majority's members are aligned around a common narrative and a shared set of questions that advance that narrative. When your own members are using the hearing to expose your administration's most politically sensitive vulnerabilities, the hearing stops being an asset and becomes a liability. Converting those hearings to roundtables removes them from the most public and most consequential format and reduces their visibility and their institutional weight. It is a defensive maneuver, a retreat, an admission that the majority cannot control its own proceedings. Johnson's public admission of lost momentum is the kind of statement that does not stay contained in a single news cycle. It becomes a permanent reference point in the political record of this period. Every Republican running for re-election is going to be confronted with their own speaker's words and asked to respond. Do you agree that the party has lost momentum? Do you believe the majority is losing control? There is no good answer to that question. If the incumbent agrees with Johnson, they are validating the narrative of Republican failure. If they disagree, they are publicly contradicting their own party's top elected leader. Either answer generates damaging coverage. The question itself is the political trap, and Johnson set it for his own members. The convergence of the Bondi ethics charges and the Johnson admission on the same day creates a political narrative of devastating simplicity. The Attorney General is facing formal ethics proceedings for obstructing transparency around the Epstein files and for carrying out the president's documented directive to prosecute his political enemies. The Speaker of the House has canceled oversight hearings and publicly acknowledged that the Republican majority is losing momentum and control. The president at the center of both stories has gone silent on his communication platform at precisely the moment when the crises are most acute. That narrative does not require interpretation or spin or any charitable reading of ambiguous events. It is the documented record of what happened, and it is going to be the narrative that every Democratic candidate in every competitive district tells between now and November. The Bondi departure rumors add another layer of instability to this picture. Reports that Bondi may be on her way out, with Todd Blanche rumored as a potential interim replacement, signal that someone inside the administration is doing the calculus about whether the current Attorney General can survive the ethics process and the political exposure that comes with it. The calculation is brutal. Defending Bondi means owning the leaked post and the ethics charges and the Epstein obstruction allegations all the way through the midterm campaign. Replacing Bondi means implicitly acknowledging that something went seriously wrong at the Justice Department under her leadership, which validates the ethics charges rather than refuting them. Both options carry enormous costs. The fact that the departure rumors are circulating at all indicates that the uncertainty around Bondi's future is itself becoming part of the story, adding to the cumulative picture of an administration that is not in control of its own institutional direction. The leaked Truth Social post has implications that extend beyond the ethics complaint against Bondi. It provides documentary evidence that will be cited in ongoing federal litigation involving the Justice Department's conduct. The Comey family cases, the SPLC grand jury situation, every legal proceeding where the question of political interference in prosecutorial decisions is at issue now has a piece of paper showing the president directing the Attorney General to prosecute named individuals immediately. That document will be introduced as evidence. It will be quoted in briefs. It will be presented to judges and juries. The administration's legal position in multiple cases has just become significantly more difficult because its own accidentally published words contradict its official defenses. The broader institutional story that emerges from all of this is deeply concerning. Across multiple months, across multiple independent lines of evidence, a coherent picture has been assembled of a Justice Department that has been systematically directed away from neutral law enforcement and toward the service of political objectives. The SPLC grand jury misconduct allegations, the Marine Comey wrongful termination, the Kash Patel defamation lawsuit, and the FBI director's public meltdown. The father re-indicted while the daughter's case proceeds on the allegation that she was fired because of her last name. The leaked post directing the Attorney General to prosecute specific political enemies. And now, formal congressional ethics charges against the Attorney General for obstruction of the Epstein files. Each of these stories, viewed in isolation, is a significant controversy. Viewed together as part of a documented connected pattern, they tell a story about institutional corruption that is now formally under investigation by the United States Congress. The ethics charges filed against Bondi are not the beginning of that story. They are the latest and most formal chapter. The process they initiate means that the story will now unfold, at least in part, through an official institutional proceeding with the authority to compel testimony and documents. That process will continue generating news through the midterm campaign and beyond. Every procedural step, every witness interview, every document production becomes an opportunity for new information to emerge about why the Epstein files have been withheld and who has benefited from their continued secrecy. The president's silence on Truth Social during this cascade of crises is itself a significant indicator of how the administration is processing the accumulation of political damage. We have noted the silence after previous moments of acute crisis crisis, the silence after the viral meltdown that dominated news cycles, the silence after the Fox News episode that generated its own wave of damaging coverage. Now, with Bondi facing formal ethics charges and Johnson admitting lost momentum and the leaked post providing documentary evidence of presidential direction of prosecutions, the communications apparatus appears to be overwhelmed. Not by one crisis, not by two crises, but by a simultaneous cascade of institutional and legal and political emergencies arriving faster than any coherent response strategy can address them. The stunned silence is the gap between the pace at which the crises are arriving and the pace at which the communications operation is capable of generating responses. That gap, visible in the quiet on the president's own platform, in the canceled hearings, in the speaker's concession of lost momentum, in the attorney general departure rumors, is one of the most concrete indicators of how serious the current situation truly is. Administrations that are managing their political environment confidently do not have gaps like this. They have response strategies. They have counter-narratives. They have the capacity to flood the information environment and shift attention to more favorable terrain. Right now, that capacity is not in evidence. What is in evidence is a gap, and the gap is growing. Let us be direct about what all of this means for the administration, for the Republican majority, and for the midterm landscape that is now less than a year away. The leaked Truth Social post is one of the most consequential pieces of documentary evidence to emerge from this administration because it transforms allegations of DOJ weaponization from a pattern-based argument into a documented evidence argument. There is a fundamental difference legally and politically between arguing that the pattern of prosecutorial decisions suggests political interference and having a document in which the president explicitly directs the attorney general to prosecute named political enemies immediately. The first argument invites debate about interpretation, about whether the pattern reflects independent judgment or political direction, about whether critics are reading nefarious intent into decisions that might have legitimate explanations. The second argument does not invite that debate. Just do it now with a list of names is not ambiguous. It does not require interpretation. It does not support an alternative reading in which the president was merely expressing general support for the Justice Department's independent operations. It is a directive, and it is now part of the permanent documentary record. The ethics charges against Bondi are built on that documentary record. The ongoing federal litigation involving the Justice Department's conduct now exists in the context of that documentary record. Every future defense of DOJ independence by this administration will be measured against that leaked post, and the measurement will produce an answer that is very difficult to spin away. Mike Johnson's public admission of lost momentum is the kind of statement that becomes a permanent reference point in the political record. Every Republican running for re-election in a competitive district will be asked about it. The speaker said the GOP is losing control and has lost momentum. Do you agree? What are you going to do about it? That question does not have a clean answer for an incumbent who needs to project confidence in the majority's ability to govern. If the incumbent agrees with Johnson, they are validating the lost control narrative. If they disagree, they are contradicting the Speaker of the House of their own party in a way that generates its own coverage and creates its own complications. In the context of a caucus already dealing with mass retirements, bipartisan revolts against the administration's foreign policy, formal ethics charges against the Attorney General, and economic indicators that are generating real anxiety in the competitive districts that determine majority control, the Speaker's public admission of lost momentum is the last thing the majority needed added to the pile. But it is in the pile now, and it is not coming out. The convergence of Bondi ethics charges and the Johnson admission on the same day creates a political narrative that is both devastatingly simple and devastatingly difficult to counter. The Attorney General of the United States is facing formal ethics charges for obstructing the Epstein files and carrying out the president's documented directive to prosecute his political enemies. The president's directive is documented in his own words in a leaked post naming specific people and demanding immediate action. The Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker, the leader of the Republican majority, has canceled oversight hearings and admitted that the majority is losing control and has lost momentum. And the president managing all of this has gone silent on his own communication platform at exactly the moments when the crises are most acute. That narrative is simple. It is grounded in documented, specific, quotable evidence. It does not require any interpretation or any charitable reading of ambiguous events. It is the documented record of what happened, and it is the narrative that every Democratic campaign in every competitive district will be telling between now and November, with the leaked post as the quote, with Johnson's lost momentum as the quote, with the formal ethics charges as the citation. This is not spin. This is the record. The Epstein thread that runs through every story in this series is the single most politically toxic, ongoing narrative for this administration, and it is now formally embedded in a congressional proceeding that will continue generating news through the midterm campaign. The Epstein files are not going away. The demand for transparency is not diminishing. It is intensifying with each new development that connects to the files, adding more fuel to the public pressure for full release. The formal ethics process against Bondi means that members of Congress are now formally on the record demanding accountability for the obstruction of that transparency. As that process proceeds, as witnesses are interviewed, as documents are subpoenaed, as the formal record of the ethics investigation develops, the information that emerges will add to the cumulative picture of why the files have been withheld and who has benefited from their withholding. That is information the administration has very strong reasons not to want in the public domain, and the ethics process is one of the mechanisms through which it could reach the public domain, regardless of what the administration wants. Every Republican candidate in every competitive district is now going to have to answer questions about Bondi, about the ethics charges, about the Epstein files, about the leaked post. There are no good answers to those questions that are also politically safe in a competitive district. The question itself is the political trap. And the administration walked directly into it with the leaked post and the Johnson admission and the formal ethics charges all arriving in the same news cycle from different directions simultaneously. So here is exactly where things stand. House Democrats have filed formal ethics charges against Attorney General Pam Bondi for obstructing the release of the Epstein files and for carrying out presidential directives to prosecute political enemies. A leaked Truth Social draft shows the president explicitly directing Bondi to prosecute named individuals, immediately providing the documentary foundation for the charges. Speaker Mike Johnson has canceled scheduled oversight hearings and publicly admitted the Republican majority has lost momentum and is losing control. Bondi departure rumors are circulating with internal discussions about potential interim replacements. The president has gone silent on his communication platform as the crises accumulate faster than any coherent response can address them. The Epstein files obstruction allegation is now formally embedded in a congressional ethics proceeding that will generate news through the entire midterm campaign. And the formal documentary record of this administration's conduct, from the leaked post to the ethics charges to the speaker's admission of defeat, is now available to every Democratic candidate in every competitive district as campaign material grounded in official, documented, quotable evidence. The administration did not create this record on purpose, but the record exists now. It is documented. It is specific. It is quotable, and November will render a verdict on everything in it.